The Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi on Monday faulted the plan by the federal government to buy new aircrafts for the presidential fleet. He described the move as insensitive, while Nigerians grapple with economic hardship occasioned by the federal government's policies.
Now, the presidency, in a swift reaction, described Obi's comment as insensitive, wondering if he would rather have the life of the president jeopardized by flying a faulty aircraft. Special advisor to the president, Bayo Onanuga, stated that the president's current aircraft is over 20 years old and now rickety. This morning, we're joined by the chief spokesman, Obidati Presidential Campaign, Dr. Yunusa Tanko. Good morning, Dr. Tanko. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What would be your response to the federal government? They have asked a critical question. They're asking if Peter Obi wants the president dead, why would he say that the president's aircraft should not be changed? Do you have maybe any response to that? And do you think that Peter Obi stands, even since the federal government's response still stands?
But they prefer that the killings and the maiming and the dying high level of loss of the common Nigerians that they already have in existing to be more presidential than that of the life of the president. The president is supposed to protect the interests of the Nigerian people. They are dying in numbers. And you know what? They are dying of hunger. But rather, the chief protector of the entity of the state called Nigeria is rather interested in protecting his own life against the people that he's supposed to defend. What an absurdity. So for us, it's not about the president's life. The president's life is important, very important as well. But then the issue is about staying at home, taking care of the needs of the people. You don't need to be junketing from one part of the country to another or one part of the world to another. It's not about his luxury now. It's about the luxury of the citizens that he swore to protect. So while I read out to you, very importantly, despite the fourth largest economy in Africa, which is Nigeria, the GDP of Nigeria is about 255 billion per capita income of 1,080, with a huge burden and debt to service. We are spending $15 million for our vice president's residence, while the United States of America, largest economy GDP, spent 25 trillion naira, about 10 times our GDP per capita income of 80,000, and about 80 times these steel houses of the vice president, number one citizen of the Republic of Nigeria, or second number one citizen of Nigeria, was built over 100 years ago, that of the US, and compared to that of ours. So you see, they prioritize their citizens' life more than their own lives. We are not saying that the president cannot fly a comfortable and probably a protective airline, but we are saying at this particular point in time, the Nigerian citizens they are in total abject poverty and the total neglect. Care for them, show interest into them. The money that you've been spending, Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, money for university parking lot, money for vice presidential house, money now for buying jeeps, money buying proposing to buy a presidential fleet for the president. All of this money could be tied down to improve the economic life of the common Nigerian.
Dr. Tanko, may I ask you, like, what's the other alternatives? And I completely hear you and agree with you that the Nigerian citizen has been suffering immensely. And it's really been a very tough time. But when the president has to make trips, if information has come to us or information out there is that the presidential fleet or the presidential planes are not good, they're not fit to fly or they're not fit for purpose, what would be the other alternatives? Now, reports reaching us is that he's arrived Pretoria for the swearing-in of President Cyril Ramaphosa in South Africa, and he went with two private jets, I believe, totally ditching the presidential aircraft. So what would be the alternative? Are we saying that he shouldn't travel anymore? Are we saying that he should start flying commercial? Or are we saying that he should probably lean more towards flying private jets as opposed to replacing it?
Let me tell you, for a president who shows interest into the lives of his people, there is nothing wrong with him flying a commercial plane at this point in time to show empathy. Even if it's to get the sympathy of his people and say, look, gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, I know we have dwindling economy. I don't need to be grandstanding or flying luxury. because we need this particular money to change the life of the people will believe that, this president cares about us. He's even flying commercial. No, we must give it to him. We must support his cause. These are simple way of getting the people. It's not a deceit, it's a fact. If for now, I cannot travel with my car because I don't have the money to pay for fuel or buy fuel, I decided to go by commercial. It's just for economic reasons, and then it shows empathy. But when the president decides to juxtaposition the life of his own citizen and protect his own, at the end of it all, when most of them are dead, who would he govern?
Yeah.
So it is not place for Mr. President to go by commercial.
Yeah.
Or even private jets that are economical. It's all possible.
Yeah, I mean, your points are clear there. And of course, if the Nigeria Air project was maybe successful, that would have been an option, I believe, for Mr. President, to use Nigeria Air airplanes. But of course, Hadi Sirikasti has questions to answer with regards to Nigeria Air. I want, your thoughts on why do you think that the current administration just doesn't see things this way, and is not interested in doing things the way that you've described to show some level of empathy to the same Nigerians that the government has repeatedly said should sacrifice. They've repeatedly spoken about sacrificing to the Nigerian people, but it seems like they don't have any interest in doing the same thing, when it's time to splurge billions of naira. So why do you think that is?
Greed and lack of interest of a nation. They believe that the country can continue to wallow in actual debt and generating resources that is not ours. So they can plunge the country into debt and they don't care. So where the people are the ones that will suffer the brunt of the debt that they incur, the people's thought and mind does not matter. So for me, it's about greed, lack of compassion, and lack of foresight. And I don't want to use the word lack of collective responsibility for the sovereignty of the country. These are some of the, in your house, for example, let's look at it. In your home, when you have $100 or 100 naira, and that particular 100 naira cannot give you security, it cannot give you food on your table, it cannot enable you to travel, or you cannot pay your school fees. You prioritize your expenditure. Some in a house may even decide to reinvest that 100 naira in order to bring in more money so that they can take care of those particular needs. That is prudency in management of resources. What we don't have is that prudency in managing the little resources that we have so that more can be generated. But they believe that they can easily get this particular money somewhere and stash it personally for themselves and their crony. So it is about personal interest and greed, not about the interest of the Nigerian people. Simple and short.
The former president, of course, before he got into office, promised to sell off, a couple of these planes. That's one of the promises that was made. That eventually didn't happen. I thought that would be important, just interesting to throw that in. Talk a little bit more about Peter Obi and those who criticize, his stance once again and say that this is just grandstanding. He's just playing to the gallery. He probably wouldn't do these, if he was in that position.
Okay.
Why would you respond to that?
Let me give you a small short story that will interest you. While he was governor of Anambra State, normally people come to government house. There's a huge budget for food intake. They come into the government house and party, enjoy dinner, lunch. It's like a fun fair when you visit the governor in the house. Go to any of the government houses. They will provide food for you when you are invited and all of that. Okay, His Excellency Peter Obi thought differently. People want to visit government house and he knows the cost of this particular implication. Now, this is not to show that somebody does not want to open up his hand and all. The sitting room, and I think I've been to that particular government house, there's 4 chairs for the dining table. 4, the one I sat. I've sat on one of them. He said, look, sir, if you want to visit me, there's no need, because I know if you visit me, I have to take from government money that belongs to all of us to bring it in, and then we'll spend a lot of money in feeding and all. Why don't I visit you to reduce the cost so that we can use that particular money for something else? These are practical examples. Those particular money, even money meant for security votes and, that's supposed to be unaccounted for by Peter Obi, was used for the interest of the people. That's prudency in spending. Some will call it stinginess. No, it's frugal. So he has practicalized it while he was a governor. That was why he was able to achieve a lot. So many of our leaders as of today will spend so much humongous money in trying to entertain and, get people to buy into their product or whatever they are doing against the interest of the people. When you know you cannot eat more than 1 plate or 2 plates of food, why don't you take this particular money to those who need it at the moment now? That's just what we are saying. At this point in time, you need to see, we just did a simple random sampling of sharing goat, ram, and cow for people. A little boy accosted me day before yesterday. And he said, sir, please, I beg you in the name of Allah, give me some of this particular meat. He's a little boy. And I said, what do you need the meat for? Because you are just a small boy. He said, no, sir, it's not for me. I'm taking it to my mother. My mother, we have about 3 or 4 children. We have not eaten food for this particular Salah. I shed tears. While our leaders are thinking of buying jets, plane, jeep, whatever, they will entertain and have a fun fair in government house. Why the people that they are supposed to govern are in abject poverty? What kind of leadership is that? What? This is everywhere. You find it in the east, west, and north, and everywhere in this country. Try and elevate. Try show empathy for the people. Care for them. Use these resources for the benefit of the people. Then in turn, they will give you double fold. It's a simple mathematics.
Yeah. All right. Okay, go ahead.
Ignite them.
All
the
right.
more you put them in the cage, the more you ignite them. You ignite them to rise up instead of assisting them. Why are you not caring for the people that you're supposed to govern? Government is in trust to a hand of leaders, but they completely ignore. That's why we are having insecurity. Hunger is ravaging the land.
All right.
And yet our people are resources to another thing. It's not acceptable.
I want us to, deviate slightly from the presidential aircraft conversation to talk about the article, this feature story by the New York Times, where they had talked about the reality of Nigerians and the current hardship that we have to live through. And the presidency responded to it, talking about it in terms of how, this is how the West portrays Nigeria and how the West likes to feature African stories. I want your thoughts on the feature story. I don't know if you've been able to read it yet, and exactly, your thoughts on the presidency's reaction to this story.
Now, the issue of grandstanding and always in denial is a negative feeling. Whenever somebody raises an issue against you, tell you that, Tanko, I don't like the way you speak too much with passion and you're accused and all. What they are telling me is that I should speak in another tone. So I take their advice as a free consultancy. So when the government is doing something wrong against the interest of the people, it is an advice. Why don't the government take it? I was listening to an article or a video yesterday. And you know the definition of how they define corruption. They say corruption has embedded itself into our system. It is a subject of study that has eaten into the canker worm and the bloodstream of every Nigerian. That if you are not engaged into corruption, you are not surviving. So we are like built with a corruption tendency. These videos were not made by Nigerians, they were made by foreigners. But that was their study of what we are. So if we don't want to be called black, act white. Just do the alternative. So whatever article is written against Nigeria is what people have seen. I mean, I cannot think about how just day before yesterday, people Kano and the rest of them. The only road that linked the northern part majorly, apart from the one that you go from Nasarawa, Kefi, and head towards Bauchi and all, the major road that links northern part of this country is the Kaduna-Abuja road. Please, I would have loved to share a video with you. The road was packed jam because a vehicle fell down. The road is not material, it has issues. It has not been completed for how many years? Now, if a purposeful government with a thinking capacity knows that this is the only road, even patching it will have been even show that you are prepared, that many Nigerians, especially from the northern part, will travel for Salah period. And those from the south will be traveling from the north going to the south. And that was the only major road. That road was not motorable throughout that particular day. Many people spend their Salah period on that particular road. And yet, when we speak, somebody...
Mr. Tanko.
When you go through the road from Kaduna to Abuja, there is no any company that is already ready to work on that particular site. Yeah. They are not there.
All right, Mr. Tanko, I mean, thanks for joining us this morning. I know it's going to be an ongoing conversation, of course, as they continue to deliberate on buying presidential aircrafts or not, So I'm certain that we'll have you join us again to once again share your thoughts, as things develop. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you. Their action is reasonable against the Nigerian state. They must stop all of this mispriority. They must stop.
All right.
Use Nigerian, not individuals. Please.
Absolutely.